Okay, welcome everyone here today. It's good to see a full gallery almost. We'll declare the agenda briefing session open at 4 p.m. Agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item on the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Tanya Jackson and nil leave of absence. Item 3, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. As per the screen, Councillor Campbell.
That's correct, thank you.
Councillor Bromham. Councillor Lovett. And Mr Hall.
Correct.
Are there any others, councillors? Councillor Crispin.
I'd like to declare a proximity partiality for 5.3.1, the development application, Olive Chambers.
Okay, item 4, deputations. Ms Bianca Sandry, welcome to address the council in relation to item 5.3.1, development application, large format retail. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor and councillors, officers and the public gallery. Bianca Sandry from Urbanista Town Planning, speaking in support of the officer recommendation. Principally, Chair, I'm here to answer any questions, but I'll just quickly provide some background and I certainly won't take up 10 minutes of your time. With respect to this application, we lodged a JDAP application back in October. That was following some preliminary meetings with the Shire officers with respect to a proposal on the subject site. It is noted in the report that the officers, upon lodgement of this application, requested a structure plan amendment be applied and sought for. We felt that it was not appropriate because we're still delivering, if not similar, a better outcome as a result of this application, and that is why we are before you this evening. This is a precursory report prior to the application actually going to JDAP, and it's asking council to provide support for the modifications to the structure plan that we're seeking through the development application. Just briefly, I'll note some of the positive attributes that this design will achieve as opposed to what the structure plan was seeking. The structure plan itself is principally based upon a central spine, and that central spine is for pedestrian use, and that connects over from your shopping centre that exists through to the subject site and there beyond. That central spine design through your structure plan was actually enclosed by buildings previously and had no direct line of sight to the shopping centre precinct that is already developed, nor to the car park that was designed as part of your structure plan. What this proposal seeks to do is provide an open air, clear and transparent central spine all the way through this development site that connects into the shopping centre site. It also seeks to anchor that central spine through food and beverage tenancies that will face the promenade, which will create that activation and sense of place that is wanting to be sought through that through your proposition of the structure plan. Also, our car parking design is now open air. What that enables is people going to, one of our retail outlets, might be buying a blender or some linen from Bed and Bath or whatever it may be, will be able to get out of their car, get what they require and see directly across the road, oh, there's a shopping centre there and there is somewhere I can go grab a dress for this evening, or I need to go do my food shopping. So it allows both sides of that road, the promenade, to be activated by people, whereas the former design lacked that. Also, the structure plan design did not account for waste management and nor truck movements. This design does, and we're doing that through the laneway, and that laneway has been cemented as being a service lane through the approval of those housing designs that face Andromeda. Those housing designs have their garages interacting with the laneway, so it's fundamentally a service lane now, and that's what we're seeking to do, and we're seeking to widen it as well, which is obviously a benefit to the community too. So for a number of reasons, and they're pretty clearly stipulated in your report, we feel that this design is absolutely an optimum and preferential design over the structure plan. It is also a development that will be built. And I think that's really important because it is a bit of a missing tooth in that town centre that is yet to be developed, and my client is absolutely going to develop this, and also has an option on another piece of land there as well. So hopefully if this gets through, then we'll go to the corner site too next. And that's about it, Chair, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
And yeah, much better design. But I did have a question. I couldn't see anywhere identified in there where there may be some EV charging points. So I was just wondering whether that's a consideration to be included as well, considering that there's a push more for electric vehicles.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's actually a fair comment, and that's something I'll certainly take back to my client, and we can discuss with the city the Shire prior to the JDA report. So yeah, no, I think that's a fair comment. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Bianca.
No, thank you.
Thanks very much.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Next we have Miss Ali Reid addressing council in relation to item 5.3.2, application for overheight building lot 72, number 40, Exwell Road, Australind. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Al Reid, and I'm one of the owners of 40 Exwell Road, Australind. We have applied to have a shed built on our property. We have quite a large section of our property which is clear, but is currently housing 2 boats, trailers, ride-on mowers, kayaks, and a lot of sporting and expensive tools, which is currently out in the elements and not secure. So we've applied for this shed. The shed will be 9 by 6. It will be slightly higher than regulations. And we're now in a financial position to build it, hence we've put our request in, and it's largely to protect the boat, and the boat has got a radar. This is the reason for the height. The boat has got a radar and aerials, so we have to have a roller door that we can get the boat through, and we have to have it slightly higher to allow for the roller door to be out of the way of the radar and the aerials. We are also seconded to South Australia for work. We work for an international construction company, and we've got 3 years secondment. My husband's there at the moment, so we will be looking to place a lot of our furniture into the shed as well, so that we can rent our property out for the 2 to 3 years that we will be away. Yeah, so that's it from me. So thank you for hearing me.
Any questions, councillors? Thanks, sir. Okay, next is Miss Michelle Catalano and Miss Sienna Dean with regards to item 5.3.3.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm Michelle Catalano and I am the owner of lot 101 Government Road in Northlands. My application has been a bit misconstrued and caused a lot of chaos and unnecessary drama in the Rollins, especially the new subdivision up the back. My application is that we repurpose 2 existing brick buildings on my property, one being a former dairy and the other one being a former hay shed. We at no stage ever want to construct another, we've been named another crooked carrot. We do not want that type of business, especially on my property. So we also don't want to, which has been branded about, that we are going to have a bar, and that we are going to facilitate areas that people can come and park their caravans and have and camp tents. So no camping, no bar, no caravans, and no crooked carrot. Just want to make that really crystal clear at the start. What we do intend to do is to repurpose the 2 brick buildings, small, one is actually a small dairy, and next to it is a small hay shed. The dairy will be turned into a boutique for my niece Sienna, with a small cafe beside it, to then be somewhere that the local people in Rollins can come and grab a cup of tea. There will be no chef on site cooking or meals or serving meals. It is mainly a cup of tea, cup of coffee, meet a friend. It's maybe a sandwich, a cake. That's all it is. It is small scale. It has been blown out, and it's a bit crazy. We've also taken out stage 2 and stage 3. So the stage 2 was going to be, because we wanted to create a community base where people, if they had something else that they were selling in the community, they could join us. But we'll take that out, and we will use the hay shed as the toilet facility and washroom. And then also part of that will be, because we're not going to use the whole thing, it's only a small building anyway, will be for Sienna to use as storage. My partner is a chef manager on a mine site who has full comprehension of waste management as well as pest control, and he will oversee anything that we need to do. He's also worked with David Kerr for the Bunbury Dolphin Discovery and has full knowledge of how to set up waste management. We have also planted many trees on the farm, so there will be no there will be nobody looking at car parks with people facing east. I've already planted close to 500 probably, and more to come this year. These are watered, some are planted 2 years ago and some are planted last year. They've been watered regularly. They're actually doing really well. They're feeding the red-tailed and the white-tailed cockatoos, so we're creating habitat for the environment. We've also planted our boundary fence, which faces our neighbours. We are more than happy to make sure that their protection or their security is protected, as well as their personal life on their property. We understand that it is in probably close proximity, but we've planted that everything will be screened. So the buildings are joined together with a yards. The cattle yards will be taken away, so that will also be green. That it will all be fenced off with more screening, so nobody will see anything. So the road that we intend to do, there is a gazetted road called Chenna Place. It was there when I purchased my property in 2004. It was on my title deeds. So we understand that my neighbour, Catherine behind me, has put her house there, and we totally fully respect her personal life. So what we aim to do is construct the road. B&J Catalano, my father, will pay for the traffic management, pay for all materials to construct the road, as well as I think there's a culvert and some asphalting and then some whatever it needs at the front to construct the road. Should there be any dust, we'll have a water cart on site. So that is the preferred route, coming off Waterloo Road, straight onto Chenna, and then there is a roundabout also at the end. We also, I want to make you aware that I relocated my water onto my property a few years ago, and part of that was I had to install a fire hydrant hooked to the mains water. So that is actually on the road reserve itself. And that's another reason why this road needs to be put in, so that should there be a fire trucks can get in there, fill up, turn around, and then straight back out. There has been talk of an alternative road being put in at the front of my property, which is a bit bizarre and really I think is just an emotional reaction or response. There is no thought. The front of my property, so you go over the railway line, there is a stormwater drain, and then you've got the railway line. So within 50 metres of stormwater drain and a railway line, members of the public think that a road can be put through there, which is a bit, it's not going to happen. And also I've been on the phone to EPA because that is a natural wet area, home to the long-necked tortoises and many, many frogs. So I'm not going to go through there. It's crazy, especially when there's also a number of trees to come down for that road to go in. Considering that there's a road that is a direct road from Waterloo straight to the dairy, no trees to come down, no environmental issue at all will be disturbed. It's currently just sand with a weed called love grass. That's all it is, so it's pretty straightforward. I am prepared to plant a screen along there so that Catherine has full privacy. That's no problem, and I'll pay for that as well and look after that, maintain that. So the little bit of history that I do have, I had a visit from Anna Jackson last year. Her father actually owned the property, and so I've been in contact with her, and we have beautiful photos. We have a lot of history which we will incorporate in Sienna's business, and yeah, so it's a friendly atmosphere for people to come. It is not a race course. We are not expecting hundreds of cars up and down all day long. My property is a paradise for me. So I don't want Catherine's place to be inundated with people, not going to happen, nor in my place. It is a paradise. So we want to utilise buildings and offer something to the small town of Rawlins. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Is there any questions, councillors? Sienna, welcome.
Good afternoon, President, councillors in the Harvey Shire. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to formally address my plans for Lot 101, 124 Government Road, Rawlins. Firstly, as Michelle has already cleared up a bit of misconceptions going around about the proposal, my business will not be targeting the same customer market as the Crooked Carrot. We'll be offering a more intimate, unique experience within a much smaller venue with no plans to expand beyond the current building envelope. We have taken on the community feedback with the previous application. We want to reassure the community we had no plans for a function centre, liquor licence, camping ground, nor children playground. As per updated proposal, which has taken in the community feedback into consideration, we have addressed the following. Taken out phase 2, 3 have been removed from the proposal. We have commenced landscaping on the property for screening purposes. Building plans and ablution amenities have been relocated. To clarify, we do not wish to be labelled as a Crooked Carrot, as it seems to be some misconceptions around our proposal. However, this is not what we're trying to achieve. No disrespect to the Crooked Carrot, this is just not my business plan. Now I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sienna Dean. I'm a local Brunswick girl, have lived on a farm my whole life. I've worked in the fashion industry for over 10 years, studied and completed fashion design and merchandising in Perth, whilst managing a successful business. My plan for the historic dairy is to open up a small cafe and a boutique. I have registered the name and chosen to incorporate the history of Chenna Dairy and my name, so the name is Senchenna. With this, when I first walked into the dairy, I knew this is where I wanted my business to be. Senchenna is a new lease on life for the old dairy, a place where the community can come and enjoy the relaxing atmosphere. The cafe will be located in the small part of the dairy, filtering out onto the deck and lawn area proposed at the front of the building. So there will be no visual disturbances for any neighbours. It will be facing our beautiful Highland cows grazing in the paddocks. with plans to get more fluffy animals in order for our customers to have a unique farm experience. The food will be locally sourced, mostly easy bites and local supplies to purchase, such as honey and olive oil. The cafe will be warm and a welcoming place for the community to get together, enjoy a coffee catch-up with friends and family within walking distance of schools. The boutique will be on the larger side of the dairy, stocking Australian labels and local items. The boutique will have something for everyone: gifting, homewares, fresh flowers and clothing. I believe this is a wonderful opportunity for the Shire of Harvey and local community at large. With that, I hope you can support my proposal. Thank you for your time and considering my application.
Thanks, Sienna. Is there any questions? Councillor Bronwyn.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. I just wondered, access and inclusion with the older buildings is sometimes difficult. I wondered if you'd included that in your planning for people with wheelchairs.
That will be,
Yeah.
yeah, that will be a building, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next deputation is Mr. Graham Featherstone and Mrs. Linda Featherstone with regards to item 5.3.4, proposed outbuilding prior to a dwelling. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. Fairly straightforward. My wife and I bought 2 plots of land on Lakeside Drive, or 115 Rig Road. The intention is to build on 1 plot of land and make the other plot of land an extended garden. So it's a double block. In fact, we now own 3 blocks on the other side. So the idea was to have house in the middle, extended garden to the right and to the left. We are renting on Lakeside Drive at the moment, and we are renting a furnished property. We moved from Melbourne 12 months ago, and we have all our belongings in a furnished house, so we don't have much space. So we applied to put a shed and a water tank onto lot 12 so that we can store our belongings in there and start to develop the garden on plot 12. Unfortunately, the rules say that you can't have an outbuilding without a building permit, which means we would have to put a house on 12 and a house on 13, which doesn't make much sense. We don't want to live there. So the idea is to have our house on lot 13, garden to the right of 12, and a garden to the left of 14. And that's really the proposal. We have no intention of living in a shed or doing anything else with it other than having a house with an extended garden to the left and to the right. So we ask to have permission to do that.
Any questions? Councillor Beach.
So have you considered amalgamating 12 and 13 into one large block?
We have spent about $30,000 considering that. Unfortunately, the land rulings are so complex and absurd that what it means is that if we amalgamate 2 plots of land, everybody else on the development has to pay more. So if our plot has a unit entitlement of 100 and the other one has an entitlement of 100, we put them together, it doesn't make 200, it makes 180, which means everybody else in the development has to pay more because we now have downsized. So after a lot of down rabbit holes and a lot of money, we decided to abandon that because it was unfair and unrealistic to ask other people to pay more because we were amalgamating. That was our original plan, to amalgamate, but it just became too difficult and unrealistic. The land laws are absurd. No common sense. So that's what we did. We changed our plans to make plot 13 our house, garden to the left, garden to the right. So much open spaces and no houses on top of each other.
Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks for that. I just wanted to confirm that you said the shed on lot 12.
Yep.
Is that just for storage or
Storage in my workshop once we get the house built.
once you get the house built? So will you be, because you're renting now, so is the intent once you've established the shed, you're moving into the shed whilst...
No,
so it's just for storage?
It's literally for storage of our belongings out of, we're in number 50 on the other side of the lake.
Yep.
So put our belongings into the shed while we build 13, which there'll be an application going in very shortly for 13. So it's really just to get the belongings out of the house, put them in the shed, have the water tank so we can start to develop the garden, we're keen gardeners. And then when the house is built on 13, we move into 13, and then we take the belongings out of the shed, and then that's my workshop.
Thank you.
No chance of doing it.
Any other questions, councillors? Thanks very much, Graham.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5.1, Chief Executive Officer, 5.1.1, Lease Jeep Owners Club of West Australia Incorporated. Councillor Dickinson, questions?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if there had been any other formal requests for the use of the site, and with it being offered to local and like-minded organisations, would they also be considered? And my second question was, has there been periodic inspections undertaken on the property? And do inspections normally take place on the leased properties on the Shire? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Look, to date, Councillor, there has been no formal request from any other entity. Because we have been in negotiations with the Jeep Owners Club, and depending on the outcome, but we're not opposed to calling for an expression of interest, for want of a better word, to see if there are other four-wheel drive clubs that are locally based with a more environmentally sensitive approach to land management. So happy to go down that path if the need arises, but we haven't had that discussion as yet. Additionally, we don't believe that would preclude the Jeep Owners Club from continuing its current level of use, which is for those 2 long weekends a year. So we wouldn't necessarily exclude them entirely. So there is that option. Periodic inspections, yes, we do them as and when is required. This particular property, because it is actually part of our larger land asset out there, there is one of us that drives past it or through it on a regular basis. So we have been aware of certain things over the years and pulled them back on it. And with our new asset sort of management approach to a lot of our properties, more regular inspections are being developed for all our properties.
Councillor Beach.
Yes, thank you, sir. Again to Mr Hall, reading their lease documents, they are to use the premises for conducting education and progressive driving skills in the area of four-wheel drive vehicles, and permitted to use the site on 12 occasions a year, so basically once a month, shooting for 3 nights for camping. Can you tell me how many times those activities have actually taken place? You mentioned that down there on 2 long weekends, but are they down there more regularly to do this education and progressive driving skills? And living where I live, during the winter time, there are dozens of four-wheel drives every weekend, and I don't know where they go, but they're covered in mud on Sunday morning.
I'm not going to answer where they go. Look, through Mr. Chair, look, we can only ascertain those 2 weekends, the June and the September one, is what the Jeep Owners Club clearly advertise and promote themselves as being their formal events. I am aware that on occasion there are people that go down there and use the facilities, whether they base themselves and go elsewhere or whether they stay within the property. I couldn't tell you, but I am not aware of any formal training or any exercise beyond those 2 weekends that we've referred to.
Councillor Brom.
Sorry, just follow up. And just to follow up on that, reading the correspondence that I won't reveal, but it appears that they want to continue with the lease. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. The discussions that we've had with them, they have come a long way with regard to satisfying some of the previous breaches. They have been requested to provide justification as to why the lease should be provided to them going forward. Still relatively silent with regard to the actual local or community benefit that would promote. It's a justification that they, out of Perth, have nowhere else to go, so they didn't want to lose this, and preserving this site may result in unauthorised activities elsewhere. But that is a discussion that has been rather one-sided as far as the benefit to the community at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Councillor Bronwyn.
Mr. President, through you. To Mr. Hall, I just wondered, is a lease arrangement with an organisation the best way to manage this particular facility, or given the changing times, would there be a better way of managing the area which would maybe allow more groups to use the facility and bring more benefits to our community?
Given the exclusivity that this club has had, the most appropriate vehicle for management is that lease arrangement. If you reduce that exclusivity, we would have to have a completely different discussion as to whether that is managed by an entity that allows for subleasing or whether that's managed by us, and we haven't gone there yet in terms of the discussions. Manager for governance may have a better view on that.
Through the chair, like any local government property, people would be able to apply for a permit process for use of that property for an event or otherwise. So in terms of how we manage the land, I think it was suggested in the report that it would return to the broader commonage area, which is currently already managed by Hayden's team and Ranger Services, and we would be able to issue event applications similar to how we issue them on any other property, providing that they have the appropriate amenities, health permits and insurances in place.
If we went down such a track, would that financially be a more benefit to the Shire overall and other groups within the community for the use of this facility?
Through the chair, we have had a particular group, I think they were motocross riders, who hold annual events within the Shire. So that's an example of an activity that might occur on the land. They did have some difficulty in contacting the Jeep Club to run the event, and they were precluded from being able to run the event there going forward. So there is other interest groups and user groups that want to use the facility, and they would be handled through an event application process like any other event in the Shire.
Given the officer's recommendation and the information just provided, at the next council meeting maybe we could consider moving down that track as part of a decision-making process. Would that be possible?
Through the chair, I believe that the tourism department have some considerations in relation to the land out at the commonage. I believe that Hayden's team, as part of Ranger Services, are also going to be looking at the commonage local law, to which that Jeep area and a few other clubs is also a part of. So I think there will be some broader strategies in relation to that entire space that would be coming before council in the near future.
Would you, if I may, would you say this is premature then to bring this to council at this stage, and that we should lay it on the table until such time as that strategy has been brought forward?
Through the chair, in relation to this particular item, is for the renewal of the lease of the Jeep Owners Club. As per the report, there have been several breaches of that lease, and that's why officers are recommending not to offer a new lease to that club. So regardless of the future planning for the area, this particular item just deals with providing a new lease to that particular group.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. To Mr. Hall, the unimproved or unapproved structures that were on the site when this club took over the lease, why were these not dealt with when the lease was given to the Jeep Club? And my understanding is they've rectified some of the unapproved structures. So if we decide not to proceed with the lease, who then is responsible for the rehabilitation of the site and the removal of the unapproved structures?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would need to go back and have a look at when the original lease was actually initially granted, but this facility has always had use by off-road vehicles. The Western Desert Races used to have it well before the Jeep Owners Club, and as part of their use they created that particular track. So as part of that there was always barrier control. There were 2 smaller sheds that were constructed. I'm not aware of as to whether or not they received any building permits at the time, but the Shire has in its lease acknowledged that those structures were there when the time was to transfer it to the Jeep Owners Club. Since then they have gone and made other improvements outside of their lease area, plus have constructed ablution blocks and fitted out kitchens and things as well. Those, unfortunately, have been away for a while, but I am informed and seen photos. I haven't looked at the site myself. I'm led to believe they have actually been removed. Those structures that they were actually personally involved in erecting, so they've been removed. As far as the remediation of the site, the current lease requirements do actually obligate them to remediate it, and it's probably an unfair statement, but they knew what they were getting into when they took on the lease in the first place. They knew what the condition of the site was. If they vacated it, we'd have the option of either leasing it to someone else that could use that infrastructure, or actually have the site returned back to its native state.
Councillor Brisbane.
I was just going to say, it was just on page 41 of the attachments, has a very good breakdown of it as well.
Okay. Any other further questions, Councillor? Okay, item number 5.1.2, Local Government Ordinary Elections 2023. Any questions, councillors? Okay, item 5.2, Infrastructure Services. 5.2.1, Victoria Road Reserve Closure, Rowlands, further report. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, I was just wondering that when we had the presentation regarding this Road Reserve 4, I don't recall there being any mention of Water Corp having a facility or infrastructure in the Road Reserve at that time. So I was just wondering whether staff were aware of that and why, if they were, we weren't made aware at the time. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, probably not the most ideal question for me to answer because I wasn't part of that presentation. Look, I would say on the basis that we've gone out into that public utility authority and they provided that feedback, it maybe was not identified at the time. But however, the current feedback we received from Water Corporation is they have got an important infrastructure in that unmanned road reserve. I'm happy to take that on the rest of the question on notice and find that out for council next week.
Okay, any other questions, councillors? Okay, item 5.3, Sustainable Development. 5.3.1, Development Application, Large Format Retail. Councillor Dickinson.
I believe that my question was
been answered.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay. Councillor Campbell.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Just making sure that I know that there's some road changes proposed for the promenade with the car parking and the extension of another lane. Is that been taken into account with this plan? Do you know what
Through Mr Chairman, those revised traffic movements along
Yes,
the promenade, because
that's
at the
it.
moment you can access those car parking bays from both sides to make them a lineal sort of get access from one side. Those plans were actually provided to the proponent up front, so their design does allow for that, and the two entry points onto the promenade does allow for purely left in, left out because of that revised design. So yes.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. I'm just getting my head wrapped around this. I quite like the plan, the revised plan, so I'm pleased that staff have followed through on this one. But the access behind the main showrooms, the laneway that they're talking about, so I drove down there the other day, that's quite narrow, but the presentation this afternoon indicated that they're going to widen that, and that's the rear access onto the site.
Through Mr Chairman, it's probably fair to say that the rear interface and the use of that service lane has been probably one of the most problematic components of the assessment of this. And to be brutally honest, if staff didn't stand up and almost argue with the traffic management consultants to say that they were wrong, we would have got a very unsafe design through there. Revised traffic modelling has confirmed that the Shire's position was correct, and as a consequence of that, they've had to redesign that entire rear section. That has meant that there is land tenure changes required in the district centre, and fortunately for the owners, the rest of the district centre is still owned by the original developer, and those additional land requirements can be satisfied between those two parties. We can't condition that to occur because of the fact that it's a separate approval process. We can't obligate state government to approve a subdivision design to allow for this. That subdivision plan, I believe, has been lodged. It has been referred to us for comment. It does address the revised design, but we're holding off until such time as JDAP make its determination. But the safety issue that we had concern with has now actually been addressed.
Thank you.
Councillor Bromley.
Thank you, Mr. Run through you. Mr. Hall, I just wondered who owns that particular piece of land when it becomes a thoroughfare along the back of it where the garages go onto? Is that owned partially by the people who own the garages that come onto it, or is it still owned by the shopping centre?
Having not seen that latest subdivision, I couldn't tell you, but I think it is actually like the car park. It's common ground, so it would actually be owned by these guys, but has public access to the rest of it, and there would be an easement in gross that allows for everyone to actually physically use that area. But physical tenure, I would have to check and get back to you next week.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to ensure that it couldn't be repurposed in the future.
No, it can't be. No, if it is, regardless, if it's held in the ownership of the applicant, there would be that easement in gross that requires it for car parking requirements. There is that requirement now for access to the rear of those mixed-use sites, so it could not be actually developed for anything other than an access way, but it's actual physical ownership. I would like to check that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions, councillors?
Just a quick one.
JB.
Did I read correctly that there will be access for trucks through Andromeda to access the back of the buildings? To access the laneway, yeah.
Off on Andromeda, there is a laneway that exists now that connects into this rear service corridor. I don't believe there is any expectation that service vehicles, large trucks, will come down that. They are to come in, basically go in an east-west direction.
Going to use Andromeda as a
and so not designed to bring them through the residential interface.
Cool. Thanks.
Sure it wasn't all set.
I will probably question myself. No, I've got a compass on my watch now.
Can you read it?
At least you're all
I'll tell you the time.
Well, that's fine.
Okay, item number 5.3.2, application for overheight outbuilding lot 72, number 40, Eastwell Road, Oscar Lind. Any questions, councillors? Okay, item number 5.3.3, use not listed, rural tourism, lot 101, number 124, Government Road, Rowlands. Councillor Coleman, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did pose a number of questions through to senior staff today, and they were well answered, thank you. Mostly around the identification of plants, planting and screening purposes, and the Shire's obligation to ensure the species that we used, and the height restrictions and the suitability of the plants in the area. So they were well answered. I guess that summarised most of my questions, if that's okay with you. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Beach.
Yeah, just one, reading the officer's recommendation. It's silent on signage, being as this place is sort of could be described as being tucked away. What's the attitude on direction signage or advertising the premises that can be seen by passing traffic?
Through Mr. Chairman, so this particular property, albeit on a Shire-owned, has direct frontage of a Shire-owned road. It's subject to our signage policy. Also our new, most recent tourism signage and infrastructure framework, so we would design a style palette consistent with that. Any directional signage off the highway would need to be involved with main roads. And it is a requirement that they would need to get the necessary approvals, and we would go through that design process with them. So can put it as an advice note if you wish, councillor, for next week, but it is an obligation that they're required to go through anyway.
Your advice note would be handy, just to say that, you know, any signage needs a separate application. That's what you're trying to say, is it?
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. During the presentation, there was some discussion there about dust. Can we put in some sort of dust management plan as a condition or the like, or the fact that they've got a water tanker that they can wet down the road so that there's some dust suppression?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I've noticed that the requirement for the condition to upgrade the Chenna Place includes installation of culverts, curbing, asphalt treatment, but doesn't go so far as to say maintenance thereafter. But there is actually a requirement. Shall we construct it within an agreed timeframe to the satisfaction of Shire? There is no reason why we can't actually enter into an agreement with them in regard to dust suppression. So that is an option. Hasn't been discussed with myself and the applicants at all, but I'll follow that up. And Councillor Beach, sorry, there is actually a condition J requiring signage, some form of signage, but I'll expand that one to include the necessary.
Councillor Capitarino.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a question for Mr. Hall. The upgrade of the road, Chenna Place, that will be an asphalted road? Is that what we're saying? I got the impression that it is.
Through Chair, I know there was discussion about asphalting all of it. The condition that's prepared by staff, and I believe with further discussions with the applicant and landowner, is at the very least the intersection of Chenna Place and Waterloo Road is that which is going to be sealed. I don't believe it's the full extent of Chenna Place with a car park, and I think which is hence why the dust comment has come through.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, item number 5.3.4, proposed outbuilding prior to a dwelling, strata lot 12, Lakeside Drive, Myla. Councillor Beach.
Yes, thank you. Each time we deal with an application of freshwater lakes, I tend to get a little bit confused because I'm not sure how progress is going on out there. It was my understanding that this development, when it was first established, was for homes that were going to be used on a temporary basis, and I'm not sure how many months or weeks of the year that they were allowed to use them. So, but it wasn't to be a place of permanent residence. Has that changed?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no, it hasn't changed. We have engaged with the current strata management body and previous strata management bodies, and probably every individual landowner over the last 10 to 12 years that have been wanting that to change. There's been one overriding limiting factor, has been the effluent disposal system there. I believe that issue has now been resolved, and it was resolved at a time when we were preparing the draft town planning scheme with the discussions with the Health Department and also the Department of Planning. Our draft scheme, which closes advertising next week, actually does provide provisions in there that would allow them to be lived in permanently. But at the moment we are granting development approvals for chalets with time restrictions for that 3 months in any 12-month period. Similar to the previous question in terms of how often do we inspect our own properties, that is an area of compliance that is probably lacking at this stage, following up that time restriction.
So, can you tell me what the current zoning is? Because in part of the officer's report it said the underlying zoning is general farming, then it goes on to say that they are considered primarily residential.
So it's again through Mr. Chair, the problem with this one is that it's actually zoned general farming with a restricted use right over the top of it that limits to short stay accommodations. So its base zoning is general farming, and that a restricted use overlay says it cannot be used for any other purpose, despite what the general farming zoning allows for short stay accommodations. So it's an antiquated way of zoning that the Department of Planning used to use. It causes us a lot of problems, and through the new scheme we'll fix that.
So the statement in one of the supporting letters that says this is their forever home, that will fit eventually?
Eventually the residence that they wish to build will be able to be used for permanent accommodation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Broughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm aware of this issue from the past, and are we creating another town site for the Shire of Harvey to manage by changing this in the new scheme?
Through Mr. Chairman, probably no. It was designed in 2 stages. It was those, well, 3 actually. The ones around the lake, of which this particular application is for. Then there was Kookaburra Close, which are sort of more semi-rural properties. Many years ago, the Shire made a decision to ignore the scheme provisions and allow them to live in permanently. And this particular one and the rural sites that are around it have always been areas where people are sort of living in them for holiday purposes. Anyway, we have a couple of residents that live there permanently. I think the ironic thing is if we actually allow people to live there permanently, they'll get a dwelling because they can actually get finance approval. They can't get it as a chalet because it's tourism. So you will actually see permanent residences being built, but probably being lived in as for tourism accommodation. So we actually don't see there being that much of a change to what's happening out there now. So there's no additional management obligations for us.
Councillor Broughton.
Yeah, so what about waste disposal? I just wondered how that would be. So I noticed the other day when I was driving along outside on the road that runs past the Harvey Golf Club, there was bins there. So I guess we were going out to the rural community and emptying bins up.
Through the chair, yeah, there's currently an existing curbside waste service provided to the residents out in that area. It's been happening for over 10 years. It's something which I know they don't receive postal services out there, but Waste Services is currently servicing that area.
Councillor Cabrera.
Thanks, Mr. President. I've just got a question for Mr. Hall. So the proponent is requesting a outbuilding, in this case a shed to store their belongings. They haven't got my understanding is they don't have a building application lodged at the moment. If they had a building application lodged, would there be access now to provide the application for the shed?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's the actual timing of any application, it's the physical location of them. So you have two lots, one of which the house wants to be on, the other of which the shed wants to be on. On that property where the shed is proposed, there is no expectation for residential occupation, so that particular outcome is inconsistent with the current planning framework. It is, and I would love to engage further with the proponents because we never opposed the application for amalgamation. If they were amalgamated, you guys wouldn't even be involved, it would be approved straight away. So the amalgamation process went so far as to actually have a draft deposited plan lodged in order for dealing, so it could be drawn down on. The issue of unit entitlements under the Strata Titles Act is something that I haven't been familiar with for quite some time, and I'd like to engage with the proponents as to why that is actually something that's stopping that subdivision, that amalgamation occurring, because if that could be resolved, then we would have no problems with the title being amalgamated and the dream house and the shed exactly where they want them. We could approve tomorrow. But whilst they remain separate sites,
so just for my, I'm just trying to clarify this. So it's a rural zone. So where there's, a farmer's got a land and he's got lots of titles and he's got sheds on every title. I don't understand where the change is. These people own 3 blocks of land, 3 separate titles. Why can't they do that? Explain to me where the difference is. Where, like I said, a farmer or their neighbours, the Tanis, they've got sheds on multiple titles.
So on a general farming or intensive farming zoning, as it stands at the moment, yes, a farmer is entitled to have a rural shed for rural purposes. Coming back to the question that Councillor Beach asked, yes, it's general farming, however there's an overlay that says it cannot be used, it's a restricted use, it can't be used for any other purpose other than short stay accommodation. That then precludes the capacity for normal general farming activities to be undertaken. So that is why you can't have your cake and eat it too, as far as being allowed to have short stay accommodation or residential with residential amenities, but yet have some of the general farming provisions coming through. That is something that was stopped when it was originally designed, and you can't try and bring forward the general farming zoning and the rights to build a shed without a residence because of that restricted use right provision. And Councillor, that has been a very lengthy discussion for a significant period of time with all levels of government. And that's why we're looking at completely changing it in the new scheme.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, item number 5.3.5, application for R code variations, lot 11, number 6, Templetonia Place, Myla. Any questions, councillors? Okay, item number 5.3.6, preparation of local planning policies, 4.1.19, the heritage list, and 4.1.20, heritage incentives. Councillor Beach.
Yeah, I did send in a number of questions. They've been answered chapter and verse from the Heritage Protection Act, and I think I got an answer, but I'm not sure, but I'll leave it at that. I think there's a yes and a no in there, but I'm happy with the response. Thank you.
A couple of hours light reading for you, councillor.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, councillors, on 5.3.6? Item 5.4, corporate services. 5.4.1, financial statements as at 28th February 2023. Any questions? Councillor Caparego.
Thanks, Mr. President. I had got a question, but the person that I was going to could answer me the question is not here. But sorry, Mr. Jones, I'm going to ask you the question. So I noticed that on EFT 64712, we are still paying a rental on the propping of Crohn's Bridge. And I recall last year at one of the meetings we discussed the opportunity of Shire purchasing the propping, for a better word. But I said that we're still continually paying a rental on that. And I think that we could have owned that piece of infrastructure about 3 times over by now. Are we going to intend to keep paying the hire, or are we going to put the bill and buy it out?
I'll put this one come through the chair here, but I might open it up to any other executives who might have been involved in some of the discussions with it. Otherwise, I'll probably take that on notice, Councillor.
No problem. Sorry to put you through that, Hayden.
No problem.
Councillor Capagrego, I'm aware that Main Roads has purchased the bridge to replace Crohn's Bridge, and there's work underway in regards to developing tender documentation and working out the funding in regards to installing that bridge. So I would suggest that the propping will not be needed into the future, and there's the optimum solution which is being investigated to be put in place.
Okay, item 5.4.2, lists of accounts paid February 2023. Any questions, councillors? Okay, item 5.5, community and lifestyle. 5.5.1, grant funding program, youth services review. Any questions, councillors? Okay, item number 5.5.2, Community Sport and Recreation Facilities Fund, February 2023-24, small grants round. Any questions, councillors? Okay. Item 6, notice of motion. Sorry, Councillor Campbell.
Oh, thanks, Mr. President, and I don't know whether I can actually go back to 5.5.1 if I can.
For a small donation
Yeah,
to the riding
my
club.
apologies.
Councillor
I
Campbell.
just had my head wrapped around this one. I know that the option indicates a service in Harvey. I acknowledge firstly that Harvey needs a youth centre of some description, but I have concerns with the officer's recommendation, or the option that they've selected, that we run with a 2-hour monthly session in Harvey. So I just want to ask whether why they feel that that would be enough to address the lack of a youth space for the township of Harvey.
Thank you, Councillor, and through the chair, I think if if budget restraints and things like that weren't a consideration at this stage in our annual budget, we would be recommending a weekly service in Harvey. We do know that there is there are limited services, there's limited venues for that. So officers have put forward a conservative recommendation at this stage, knowing that we are at this point looking at, if that does work, that we might be able to extend on it. Also with the being at the rec centre, we do know that we've got other programs that we might be able to roll into it to support it as well on a bit more of a regular way, with the roller skating on Friday nights and some other things that are happening around school holidays as well.
Councillor Brolin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. One of the issues that we've come across at Lot 208 with young people is consistency. And if you run it on a monthly basis, if you think about it, over a 12-month period with time off for Christmas, that's 11 times. And if you don't have consistency, then people just don't come. The most important thing that we found in Lot 208 is the vision of a safe space and food. Because when you put this type of thing at a sports venue, you're really not gathering the youth that you want to gather in that area. Those people that play sport, they go to those areas. This is usually for others, and it's very important for us to understand that at the moment. I look at the plan, I think when we're talking about homework, you know, it's like a babysitting service for 2 hours. So I really type of question the use of doing something like that when we should be looking broader. I understand there's financial implications to that, but when you think about where Harvey is in relation to the northern end of the Shire and towns that will utilise that facility, being Cookanup and Yarloop, I think, you know, we should look at this more in detail rather than understand the financial side and why you've gone down that path. But consistency is a huge thing when dealing with youth, and I think we need to look at that, otherwise we're not going to get the data that we want anyway. That's my statement, isn't it?
I was going to say, the only question in there, you were questioning the questioning.
I was questioning the
yeah,
questioning.
So you can also
My apologies.
add to the fines contained.
What do you think about that?
That does not get you off the hook, Councillor Brom. Councillor Caparetta.
Thanks, Mr. President. I have a question, and that is simply the 7% of the youth live in the township of Harvey on the total Shire.
Yep.
So can I make it, let's have a look at maybe in the next budget that we allocate better funding so we can provide a better service for the youth. We should start with what's been proposed and look at expanding.
Councillor Campbell.
Just following on from that, then my question, having just sat through the audit committee, is whether Shire staff, we actually have the capacity within our staffing levels at the moment to deliver a service in Harvey.
Thank you, Councillor. So the recommendation or the investigation would consider new resources being required to deliver an additional service in Harvey, which is hence a conservative model to start with, if we can even seek the right person to deliver a place-based service in Harvey to the youth. We have recently been successful in registering as a local drug action team, which acknowledges that it must be a new program, so that would fit very well with that. So that would be able to release allocate $20,000 to the program and the program delivery. But what we would be seeking is the resource to deliver that program.
Councillor Crispin.
Probably is in here, but I was just confirming that there's like possibilities for staff from Lot 208 to basically transition into employment through the adoption of basically the Shire taking over Lot 208.
I'll continue through the chair. Thank you, Councillor. That was investigated and very much formed part of the attachment. There has been a strong indication reflected from the service provider here in Australind that they wouldn't be they wouldn't have the capacity to extend their services outside of what they're currently doing.
So with the Shire taking on like Lot 208 services, the staff which are currently employed through Lot 208, they've got the availability for the position to transition over into the Shire?
Yes, that was considered and discussed, and it is an option. However, the report doesn't recommend taking on Lot 208 because it's currently still in existence, and until the point that happens, it wouldn't be the officer's recommendation to go down that path.
Thank you.
Councillor Tolman.
Yeah, this is probably a bit left field, but just wondering, because we've got a fair bit on our plate in terms of building and infrastructure and projects coming up, and everybody in the room acknowledges that youth is super important in everything that we do. I'm just thinking that would councillors consider, and we don't need, obviously can't make decisions today, but would councillors consider stalling the Ridley Place project and putting that funding into the youth to start with, certainly in the next budget, and concentrate on the 2 precincts in the meantime?
Probably a question for budget review or budget process, I think. Any other questions regarding 5.5.1? Councillor Beach.
Statement, but
Carry on.
Are councillors aware that Lot 208 had its genesis in an organisation called The Escape? Yes. And that was brought about by rounding up half a dozen kids from that were hanging out of the rec centre and finding them a place to operate. And that was a small acorn that's grown into Lot 208. I see a parallel here, and I concur with Councillor Capagrego. If we start small, we might be able to build big. And as I say, we've got the runs on the board with 208. Started off with a small grant from the Gordon Reed Foundation through lotteries, and away it went. So, yeah, I don't think we should get hung up that it's only on a monthly basis at the moment. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, I don't think we've lost a great deal. But the question is, are you aware?
Yes. I knocked the building down.
You still did not escape. So there's a few fines tonight, councillors. Okay, 5.5.2. Any questions with regards to Community Sport and Rec Facilities Fund? Item 6, notice of motion for following meeting. Nil. Item 7, matters behind closed doors. So 7. Okay, as there's no further business to discuss, move on to item 8, closure of the meeting, and declare the meeting closed at 5:37. Have a great week.